From HanselMinutes.com, it's Hansel Minutes, a weekly discussion with web developer and technologist Scott Hanselman. This is Lawrence Ryan announcing show number 265, recorded live Thursday, May 5th, 2011. Support for Hansel Minutes is provided by Telerik RAD Controls, the most comprehensive suite of components for Windows Forms and ASP.NET web applications. Online at www.telerik.com. In this episode, Scott talks with Travis Illig about available NAS options.
Hi, this is Scott Hanselman, and this is another episode of Hansel Minutes. And today, we have a very special guest, Travis Illig, the man who invented the word Hansel Minutes. How's it going, Travis?
I'm doing pretty well, Scott. How are you?
Okay. Why did you, out of curiosity, before we start talking about network attached storage and appliances, do you remember when you invented this?
When I invented Hansel Minutes?
Yeah.
I'd have to look it up on my blog, but I'm thinking it was many years ago, sitting in your office over here. Hey, we'll code this thing up. It'll be done in like 10 minutes, and then later on that week, oh no, 10 more minutes, it's fine. So it's 10 Hansel Minutes.
So Hansel Minutes is in fact, people think that it means that I get things done quickly. In fact, it means that I'm awful with estimates.
Yeah, and it's just estimates, right? 10 minutes. Everything's 10 minutes. You gotta make a whole new blog engine? 10 minutes. Give me 10 minutes.
I missed you.
Good times, man.
Good times. So, my Windows Home Server, which I talked about forever on my blog, is starting to die. You have a home server, and I have one, but it's getting really sick. It's hanging. I have 4 hard drives in my Windows Home Server, and one of them is going back and forth from healthy to unhealthy. Have you had any issues with your home server now that it is nearly 5 or 6 years old?
Actually, I did, and what my problem turned out being is actually an entire line of unreliable drives in a server capacity. I don't know what kind of hard drives you ended up extending yours with. I ended up getting some of these, nicely priced Western Digital green drives, and some of them, it turns out, are perfect in a server environment, but others, if there's any sort of like heavy I/O, like SQL Server, sort of thing, in parts, then they just fall down. And so I had problems where if you were, storing some photos or something, everything was fine. But once you start running defrag or whatever, red lights start flashing and, fire shoots out the back and, your house explodes. It ended up falling down pretty hard.
Did you lose any data?
I didn't actually lose any data, but, what I did lose is confidence in the whole solution. Even though it wasn't necessarily the home server's fault or the defrag program's fault or anything, it was like, wow, this looks like it's a fairly fragile sort of a thing, and that's actually what kicked me off starting to look at potentially other solutions. Because if you did end up losing data or something like that, you've read probably some of the blogs with horror stories about trying to recover your server and certain things aren't working or whatever, and I was also having some performance issues where it wasn't accessing data super fast. Again, potentially part of the drive issue, but home server is kind of also a little notoriously slow on the data access as well.
Yeah, so let's talk about why someone would want a home server, and then we'll dig into some of the issues that we've both had and what we're doing about it. I think performance is definitely one. So
Sure.
Why would someone want a server in their home for the first, and how is this different from me just getting a bigger hard drive? Because I've told a lot of people have just said, oh, well, just go and buy a big hard drive, hook it up to your main computer, and problem solved.
Well, honestly, my original desire for a home server was to store media. I have a fairly sizable DVD and movie library, and it was getting kind of to the point where you couldn't really store it in any sort of accessible format. If I wanted to browse through my movies or, watch something in particular, you're looking through, binder upon binder of movies without any covers or anything on them because they just took up so much space. Media storage is a pain. So I started looking specifically to store media, my music, my movies, that sort of thing. And I didn't go for the larger hard drive because I wanted all that stuff accessible from any machine on the network. And I didn't want it to be subject to, I'm sitting here surfing on, the web or whatever, and something happens and I have to reboot the machine. Suddenly all of the rest of the machines on the network no longer have access to that media, and that's not really an acceptable solution. So it just made sense for me to start looking at centralized servers, and the home server seemed like it was a pretty reasonable solution for that, especially with all the additional features that it offered, like the image-based backup and the integration with Windows showing you network health status and that sort of thing. It seemed pretty slam dunk at the time.
Yeah, it seemed to me that the primary reason that I got a home server was the image-based backup. If people who aren't familiar with them, a Windows home server is a small PC that's an appliance. It originally ran Windows 2003, and now it runs Windows 2008. And it has been extensively customized. And one of the most impressive features of it has been this image-based backup. So you basically install a connector on all of your machines, and you have a complete image. And if you've ever restored from a disaster with a home server, it is amazing. I mean, you literally just back up in time. Have you ever had to do that?
I have not, but I've talked to a few people who have worked it, and it's always been just super simple, almost just like the whole system restore point sort of a thing, Boot up, magic happens, and you're back to where you were at your last nightly backup. So, again, very impressive.
Yeah, it has saved my butt probably 4 times, including just a couple weeks ago when an SSD died. You boot off a CD, you point it to the home server, you pick the time of day you wish to go back to, and you're back, and that's it. And I've literally had like massive crash, buy a hard drive, plug it in, restore, keep working, and I think elapsed time 2 hours kind of thing. I don't know how many Hansel minutes I did,
awesome.
but it was I broke it in the middle of the day, and I was working by that evening. So that of course is not new. You've got things like Acronis True Image and Norton Ghost, but it was kind of the first example of an extremely clean, populist restore process that just worked. So that was number one reason.
It worked on an automated basis where you don't even have to think about it. It's kind of remote, and you set it up once, set it and forget it sort of a thing, which was a big draw for me, yeah.
Right, and you can do your whole house. I think I had up to 7 machines running kind of all at the same time. The second thing that was amazing about home server was the thing called the drive extender. Can you talk to me about SCSI versus, not SCSI rather, but RAID versus drive extender, and why was that so significant?
So drive extender was actually another one of the selling points for me. In a classic sort of a RAID solution, RAID being a redundant array of independent disks. With RAID, you have to kind of know how many disks you have. You have to have them basically match all the same size. You have to, there's a lot of setup and whatnot, and it's very fault tolerant depending on which RAID configuration you have. But it's kind of like it's not very easily expandable historically. So doing that and setting all that up, it's not quite as slam dunk easy. Can it be done? Yeah. Can it be done by, your mom or something as simple as that? Probably not so much. The beauty of the drive extender feature in Windows Home Server was you turn Windows Home Server off, you plug a new drive in, you turn it back on, and, again, magic happens, and you can just add this new drive to this one unified storage pool, so you don't have to worry about moving data off the RAID array, moving data back on the RAID array, trying to extend the array size, that sort of thing. You don't have to worry about it. It's just, it's seamless and very simple, which was something that, again, at the time was offered only in a couple of other products, and mostly Unix or Linux based, and was not something for somebody who did like me, who wanted more of an appliance that would just make things happen, so that I wouldn't have to fiddle with it or set a bunch of stuff up. My wife can work with it, and it's super easy. If something goes wrong, which it doesn't go wrong, but if something goes wrong, it's simple to fix, as opposed to me, a Windows guy, not really into the whole Unix Linux world. That would have taken me a lot longer to fix if something happened. Right,
exactly. The drive extender thing I can attest to being amazing. I started out with 500 gig drives. I think I had 3 of them. And then later I removed one of them, which was trivial. You basically just right click on the drive, say remove. It goes and makes sure that everything from the 3 drives is now on 2. You add in a couple more terabyte drives, and I'm currently on my home server. I have 2 1 terabyte drives and 2 500 gig drives.
Yeah.
And it just works. It's totally fine. But the machine that a lot of these the home server was meant to be an appliance, and it was sold by partners like HP. The machine tends to be a little bit inexpensive, and as such, a little bit underpowered. I've got the original HP Media Smart. And
I also have one of those. I think mine's the 475 model.
Exactly. And I even went so far as to break the warranty and upgrade the memory, because it came with a half gig of RAM, right? And I think I upgraded it to 2. But it is notoriously underpowered, because anyone who just needs a home server and a backup, it's great. You want to back up your photos and back up your your life.
Documents and whatnot, yeah.
Fantastic. But I also wanted to throw videos on it, and I wanted to transcode or dynamically encode those videos. I have digital photographs going back to 1998. So we've got 14 years of photos, basically. I've got videos of my kid's birth in various formats, going back 5+ years. And I want to be able to watch them on my Xbox. So now suddenly my simple backup solution starts becoming more complicated. I need to support multiple codecs, multiple video codecs, multiple formats. I need to be able to talk this was it DLNA? What's the thing?
Yeah. Digital Living Network Alliance, I believe is what that stands for.
Right, which is a fancy way of saying your Xbox and your PlayStation can talk to it using I think UPnP and some standardized XML formats. And it sounds silly, and maybe I'm going over the top, but really being able to view your photos and videos whenever you feel like it on your big screen TV using an appliance like an Xbox or PlayStation or even a Wii is really cool. And I can't tell you how many times we've had folks over to the house and said, "Oh, you want to see pictures of such and such a trip?" And we fire up the Xbox and boom, we're watching them. So then that becomes interesting. Those kinds of disk-intensive, processor-intensive activities suddenly became an issue because the home server device, not the product, but the device, was underpowered.
Yeah, I ran into similar issues trying to stream, DVDs off of the server. You stream one DVD and you don't bother fast forwarding or pausing or anything, and everything's fine. But if you start needing it to do some major random access stuff, or you need to start streaming something that's a little more maybe high def video, that sort of thing, it definitely becomes a bit of a performance bottleneck.
Exactly. So this was an issue. So then fast forward a little while, and home server as a product goes from the original home server to 2011. I think they call it Windows Home Server 2011. Yeah. And it's all refreshed, new UI, a bunch of new features, but for whatever reason they got rid of this drive extender technology. There were rumors that it was not reliable. Which I didn't find to be the case, but there were rumors that it was unreliable. What else did you hear about why they removed drive extender?
I think that they were talking about some of the performance issues around it, having the part of the drive extender thing, I think, was also the file duplication, and that was sort of their version of RAID that was built in the drive extender, right, where you can right-click on a certain file share and say, anytime you store files in this particular share, I want you to actually store 2 copies of the file on 2 different disks. So if one disk dies, there's another copy on the other disk. I think that they were saying, I remember early on in the home server lifetime, there was a bit of reliability around that, where the synchronization process was corrupting some files. There was a patch that came out very quickly that resolved that issue. But I think that they were talking about some of the reliability as well as the performance on that.
Yeah. I forgot about the duplication issue. That is one thing. There's a process that runs in the background that will do that duplication. So when you copy a big file, for example, if you decide to just go and dump 5 gig files on the machine, it needs to go and duplicate those. So it will go and do that work, and that can take some time. So definitely there were. I understand also there would be the engineering of it. I mean, it's a complicated thing. It's a big feature. Some smart people got to work on that. You can't lose any data. So they removed that feature, and that became a big scandal. Everyone was like, "This is the death of the Windows Home Server," because even though it has all these features, for many people that was the feature, right? Drive extender was the feature, and without it, all the other stuff is not a distinguisher.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the huge selling points for me over some of the other, similarly priced NAS products, network attached storage products. The ability to just, jam in a new drive, like you were saying, swap out one drive for a new drive, that sort of thing, without, even really thinking about losing data or anything like that, or, complex mounting and unmounting or anything like that. I mean, it was just so drop dead simple, and that was, one of like the top 5 things that just totally said Windows Home Server is the way to go for me.
And I think that what you just said, the idea that it was drop dead simple, it was like network attached storage for, your mom.
That's absolutely what it was.
And, it's funny, actually, one of the stories that I always told that was totally true was I was hiring a guy to put in our backyard. And while he was looking around, he happened to see the home server and asked where I worked, and the whole conversation discussed where he says, well, gosh, I've got 5 machines at my small office, his small landscaping company. And I said, well, I could probably set that up for you. So I basically bought him a home server and set it all up, and we traded. So we did a bartering thing where he puts my backyard in, and I traded him for a home server. And that took you what, 2 hours or something to put in, I'm sure? It was 2 or 3 hours, basically. I mean, it was literally buy the home server, go and install the backup software on all of his machines, and then pop in a couple of drives, and that was pretty much it. It was ridiculously easy, but for him it was a miracle and wonderful and amazing, and I don't even think he realized he probably could have done it himself. That's how kind of easy it was.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, even once you handed it over, one of those concerns when you do something like that is, are they going to be able to maintain this themselves? And the answer in that case was absolutely yes, because it is literally that simple. It's just, you don't have to be a tech person even. Just plug it in, hook it up. It's as simple. It's like Xbox simple. It is so appliance-oriented. It was so nice.
Exactly. Hi, this is Scott, coming to you from another place and time. Are you using agile practices to manage your software development? There's lots of tools on the market that manage the steps of a project, but most of them focus on individual roles. Get ready for a solution that caters for the success of the whole team. The guys at Telerik introduced Team Pulse. It's an agile project management tool that'll help you gather ideas, estimate, plan, track progress in a common workspace. Finally, companies, regardless of their size, can use a lightweight and convenient tool that makes all the stakeholders work as a united team, even if they're in different countries. By combining intuitive user interface and the power of Silverlight, Team Pulse removes the roadblocks that you typically face in applying Agile in an effective manner. No more lost data, no disparate systems, no lack of critical analytics regarding the health and velocity of your project. See for yourself. Get a free copy for 5 users and 1 project at Telerik.com/TeamPulse. And please do thank Telerik for supporting Hansel Minutes on their Facebook fan page. Facebook.com/TELERIK. Telerik. We do appreciate it. There wouldn't be a Hansel Minutes if there wasn't Telerik helping us. So, all of this preamble to the point where my home server is dying. The product is fine, the OS is healthy, but my hard drives are starting to go. All hard drives have a MTBF, a mean time before failure, and that typically is 5 years if you're lucky. And I'm somewhere around 5 years. And you can always look at your hard drive, look at the top of it. They usually have a born-on date, a manufacturing date. Mine are dying, and I had to ask myself, do I want to go and buy more hard drives and keep going with this? Do I want to upgrade to an all-new home server 2011, or do I want to try something else that's come out in the last couple of years that might give me the power that I want? And my primary frustration with the home server hasn't been with the software; it's been with the product from HP just being not powerful enough. I want not only a big giant array of disks, but I also would like some processor power, like that's not on my main desktop, so that I can go and have it do some work for me.
Absolutely. Some of that video transcoding and audio transcoding and things that you're mentioning. Definitely, you need a little more beef to it than just 500 megs of RAM with a minor level processor.
Right. So I went and I bought a Drobo FS a couple of days ago because their marketing department is fantastic, and they seem to have a very impressive product. And I was warned on Twitter that this was probably a mistake because the Drobos are notoriously weak and underpowered, and I've heard that they are very slow. And that I run gigabit Ethernet at the house here, so I've got the whole house wired. I don't like to use wireless if I can avoid it. Everything I do is wired, because if I'm moving anything of any size around, even a 3 or 4 megabyte image, gigabit's always just going to kick wireless's butt.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
I bought it anyway, so I went and I got the darn thing. And guess how long it lasted?
What, a half a day or something before you put that back in the box?
Yeah, pretty much. I got the entire thing hooked up, put all the drives in. Half a day later, I was like, this is BS. It was so slow. I'm used to transfer speeds upwards of 30 to 50, 60, 70 megabytes a second, not megabits, megabytes. And I move a lot of VMs around, and I've got, a couple of terabytes of data. Loading this thing up was going to take an eternity. And
Are you getting that 75 or whatever megabytes a second from your home server?
So the home server with jumbo frames turned on, if you use gigabit Ethernet, remember that TCP/IP and these things were kind of developed in a time that did not expect the kinds of speeds that we're getting right now. The easiest thing that someone who has a gigabit Ethernet at their home can do to get faster speeds is first confirm that you've got the latest version of Windows, because you want to use SMB2, but then go into your network adapter in the driver settings and turn on jumbo frames and set your size to 9K, 9,000 bytes. And that, I've got a whole blog post on this if you search for Gigabit Ethernet Enhancement. And I was regularly on the little crappy HP getting 50, 60 megabytes a second copies.
Very nice.
Very nice. But I was getting 15, 20, maybe on the Drobo. And if I copied 2 things at once, it would drop down to like 3.
Oh, that's just painful.
Yeah. So that was not only painful, it was absolutely unacceptable. It was wholly and woefully underpowered. So it went home.
Home to the Drobo home.
It went home to the Drobo home. I sent it back. And surprisingly, they were very cool about it, and they didn't make me pay a restocking fee.
Nice.
So then I did a little more research, because I think that the Drobo was basically a panicked maneuver on my part. I needed something. I felt I was going to lose photos pretty soon. I knew my hard drive was, there were literally days left in my hard drive. So I went and I did some more research. The choices then were either a QNAP, build it myself and use a Linux system like FreeNAS, NAS.
Mm-hmm.
Basically,
I looked at that myself.
Right, go and buy a shuttle PC, a little tiny one. It fries electronics for $500, $300 even, and then use a free Linux system, or one called a Synology. Now, you recently bought a new NAS drive. How did you make your decision, and what did you end up with?
So the stuff that I looked at, I actually looked at a lot of the things that you mentioned. I also looked at some of like the Netgear Ready NAS and Seagate Black Armor, and I mean, I spent probably a good month or so because I didn't have quite the sense of urgency around it that it sounds like you had. I narrowed it down based on reviews and that sort of thing to the Synology, the Drobo, and one of the Netgear products. I X'd out the Drobo because, again, I was reading reviews of things that sounded just like you had, where it was performance issues. And then it was down to the Netgear and the Synology. I ruled out FreeNAS pretty early on because part of my decision criteria was I want an appliance. I want, just like the home server, I want to be able to plug it in, not think about it, let it run, and do its thing. And I've messed around with FreeNAS a little bit before, and it's one of those things where if you don't mind sort of being, having that be a hobby, tinker with it every once in a while to check out why this is working or that's not working and stuff, it seemed like it was going to be less an appliance than some of these other things. And I also wanted some supportability, right? So if I have a problem, I don't want to have to be spending 3 days going through forums and, asking people in IRC chat rooms and all these other things how to fix this thing. I want to be able to call somebody and say, hey, you sold me an appliance, the appliance isn't working, and I need you to help me fix it. So I got it down to that the Netgear and the Synology, and the reason I ruled out the Netgear was actually expandability. The Synology that I ended up getting, the DS1010 Plus, which I think is last year's model of what you have now, it has 5 drive bays in it to start with, where the Netgear product I was looking at only had 4. And the Synology has an expansion port on it where you can actually attach another sort of drive bay house thing that has another 5 bays in it. So you can have up to a total of 10 disks in this thing, whereas the Netgear, there was no eSATA plug, there was no USB on it. You were stuck with the 4 drives. Mm-hmm. So knowing that I was trying to store literally 800 plus DVD images, not compressed into WMV or anything like that, but actually full on video TS rips of the disks, I knew I was going to need that expandability, so I went ahead and went with the Synology product. And
which Synology number did you go with?
Mine is the DS1010 Plus, so it's 1010 Plus. If you actually go to their website, I think right now they're advertising the 1511 Plus. It looks like it's the same body on it and everything, so it's basically the same thing that you're looking at there. But I think the new part of the 1511 is that you can have 2 of those extension boxes, so you can have up to 15 drives instead of just the 10 drives that mine is quote-unquote limited to.
Right, and I bought the DS1511 Plus, and they have a whole series of these. The 1511 Plus is kind of mid-range in the small business server area of their site. They also have home to small office, so I did go a little bigger than maybe appropriate, but it'll do up to 15 drives, like you said. So this particular one, you can have the extenders. I put in 4 2 terabyte drives. It'll also support the new 3 terabyte drives. So you can have up to 45 terabytes on this particular thing. And it runs a custom, Unix distro that they call DSM-3. I think I'm running DSM 3.1 actually.
Yeah, I think it's big. Yeah, DSM is Disk Station Manager, their product line being Disk Stations.
Yeah, and the whole thing is run over this very kind of Ajax-y web interface, although they have a series of iPhone applications as well for looking at your files and managing them. They usually anticipate that people are going to have multiple ones of these. set up. So if you outgrow one of them, you can make additional volumes or you can make additional disk stations. So apparently they're very popular in universities and places like that. So right now I've got, let me see here, I've got 5.4 terabytes free, even though I put 8 terabytes of disk in, and that's because of the disk duplication. So they basically have their own drive extender. And like you said earlier, there are a number of vendors that have their own file systems that do a drive extender-like experience. So because the feature that I wanted in Windows Home Server isn't there anymore, the drive extender, the ability to add any drive of any size to an array, that's kind of my primary reason for going with the Synology. I feel like I get Drive Connector back.
So are you using then the I think they call it hybrid RAID solution that on the Synology disk? That's their sort of drive extender thing, if I recall correctly. Is that what you're working with?
Right. So
then?
they have all the standard RAID options, and then they have their Synology hybrid RAID, which is what they call their drive extender.
Excellent. Yeah, I actually have I filled mine up on day one with 2 terabyte drives, and so since I had it already filled up and everything, and I figured there was going to be a pretty reasonable investment cost to get another 5 drives and the little Bay extendy thing, I just went ahead and went straight with the RAID 5.
And I see. So yeah, okay. So you went with a technology you understood more, felt comfortable with the knowledge that you could have another volume on a separate extension, on a sidecar.
Yes.
Exactly. So things that I've been impressed with this is it has all of the usual things you'd want. It has FTP and it has dynamic DNS. It has the media server. It can pretend to be an iTunes server. It has audio and video streaming. It can be I don't use it, but it could be a BitTorrent service. You can actually source BitTorrent and make it be a download station. Now, a couple of the things that I've been extremely surprised about that I did not see coming. It has a thing called surveillance station. And I've blogged about my IP phones. I've got, IP cameras. I've got a number of Panasonic webcams around the property here. They have a thing called surveillance station that magically knew the brand of my phones. Again, I keep saying phone. Magically knew the brand of my camera, connected to them over IP, and then can now record them. So if you had a small business and you had a number of inexpensive $100 IP cameras scattered around your business, the surveillance station would then use the NAS storage to store effectively a DVR, a digital video recorder, many hours of video from your cameras. So suddenly my cameras, which right now stream live but only record the last few minutes, could potentially, if I left the property for a couple of days, I could even store a week of video from multiple places. So it really expanded the abilities of what I already had, which I thought was pretty amazing.
That is pretty cool. I haven't actually used that specific feature on it yet, and I was going to start searching around to see if somebody had, and it sounds like it's a pretty impressive feature there. Yeah,
the only thing I didn't like was that by default you only get one camera, so you have to basically buy licenses to up to like 20 cameras or whatever their main number is. So they tease you with one license and then you pay a couple of bucks for the rest. But if I was running a small business and I wanted that kind of functionality, I've already got it, and I don't have to go and spend thousands of dollars more on IP surveillance camera equipment, which is an investment. The other thing that it's got that I'm impressed with is you can actually back up directly to S3. So I was able to go up to Amazon, sign up for an account, make what's called a bucket to put all of your S3 storage in there, and you can back up directly to the cloud. So right now it's backing up 68 gigabytes of photos up into the S3 system.
Interesting. I also haven't done that because I figured, I've got 10 terabytes on it at 7.5 or so in the partition after you account for the RAID overhead, and I think I've got 5 terabytes or something of DVD rips. So I haven't bothered working on trying to back those up to the cloud because I've got the original media anyway.
Exactly.
And I figured,
so I don't count those. You have the DVDs, you have a backup.
Yeah, and I figured, even if I was to back it up, what's 5.4 terabytes going to cost me at Amazon, right? It's going to be just astronomical. So I just decided not to bother with it.
It's less than you'd think, but it is expensive. I think this 68 gigs is going to cost me like $4 or $5 a month. But you're right. I mean, there is a cost there. But of course, I've also got external drives. So what I'll be doing is continuing with my existing backup strategy. And actually, we're running out of time, so I'll just close with this. What I'm doing now is I've got the Synology 1511. I've got 8 terabytes in it. I've got 5 available. I went and I got an inexpensive version of Acronis True Image. I'm backing up my main desktop and all the PCs in the house on a schedule twice a week with Acronis, except for my work machine, which is backed up daily. So I've got disk images of my system going to the Synology. I've got personal files, family videos, and family photos all going to S3, and they've got all sorts of choices for encryption and such. Then I'm backing up the Synology itself to a multi-terabyte external drive, of which I have 2, and then I just go back and forth to the bank every month with an offsite backup. Sounds complicated, really not complicated. Once it's set up, I haven't given it any thought, and I was very impressed with this particular device. So I recommend the Synology for people to check out. If you don't need drive extender, I certainly recommend the home server, and I don't mean that tongue in cheek, and I don't mean it as a Microsoft shill. I mean, it's a great product. It's just it totally sucks that they removed the drive extender functionality. But I don't think my dad needs that. A 2 terabyte drive is huge. I'd probably set up Hardware RAID or something, but I don't think he needs that.
I agree. I've still got my home server. I love my Synology. It really just kind of depends on what you need. If you still just want a little bit of storage, and you're not too worried about the drive extender, home server is still a fantastic product.
Yeah. Cool. So thank you very much, Travis, for chatting with me today about the network attached storage, and I'm glad that we both are happy with our new Synology choices.
Well, thanks for having me, Scott.
This has been another episode of Hansel Minutes. I'll see you again next week.